Let's gather for the family photo. My mother-in-law, Sandra, announced, her voice carrying across the elegantly decorated living room of her mansion. Everyone in their Sunday best. I watched as my 12-year-old daughter, Lily, smoothed down her carefully ironed blue dress. The one I found on clearance at Target, but had altered myself to look boutique-worthy. She'd spent an hour that morning making sure her dark hair was perfectly braided, so excited to be part of her grandmother's annual spring family gathering. "Not you, dear," Sandra said, her perfectly lipstick smile not quite reaching her eyes as she gestured for Lily to step aside. "The lighting wouldn't complement your outfit. We'll take some casual shots later." I felt my daughter stiffen beside me, her small hand gripping mine tighter. The excitement in her eyes dimmed as she watched her cousins, all dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than our monthly rent, arrange themselves artfully on the grand staircase. "Mom," I started, but Sandra was already turning away, fussing over my sister-in-law Jessica's daughter, Emma, adjusting a bow on her Gucci dress. "Perfect, darling. You look just like a young debutante," Sandra cooed, while Emma preened under the attention. My sister-in-law shot me a smug look, the diamonds at her ears catching alight. I'd married into the Wellington family 10 years ago, when Tom and I were young and in love, before his father's company took off and transformed them from comfortable to wealthy. Back then, Sandra had been almost friendly, though she always made little comments about my humble background. Now, with their family's face splashed across local society pages, everything was about image. "It's okay, Mom," Lily whispered, though I could hear the hurt in her voice. "I can take pictures of everyone instead." She pulled out her small sketchbook, the one she carried everywhere, and started drawing quick outlines of the family tableau. "Oh, put that away," Sandra called out. "We have a professional photographer here. We don't need doodles." Lily's cheeks flushed red, but she kept drawing, her pencil moving swiftly across the paper. I watched in amazement as the scene came to life under her fingers. Not just the poses and clothes, but the personalities shining through. Emma's artificial pose, Jessica's calculating smile, Sandra's controlling stance. "All right, everyone in position," the photographer called out. "Family only, please." "We are family," I said firmly, but Sandra was already shaking her head. "Olivia, dear, you know what I mean. We need a consistent look. Your situation just doesn't quite fit. It's nothing personal." My situation, being a middle school art teacher who couldn't afford to dress my daughter in Prada. Tom was still at the hospital doing his residency, choosing to work at a public hospital helping people rather than join his father's business empire. Sandra had never forgiven him for that choice. "Actually, Mom," Tom's voice cut through the tension as he walked in, still in his scrubs. He'd managed to get away from his shift after all. "If my wife and daughter aren't in the photo, I'm not either." Sandra's face tightened. "Thomas, don't be difficult. You know how important these photos are for the family newsletter. What will people think?" "They'll think we're exactly what we are, a family that values appearances over actual relationships," Tom replied, moving to stand beside us. He looked down at Lily's sketch and smiled. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. You captured everyone perfectly." "It's just a silly drawing," Emma said with a sniff, but I caught her trying to peek at the sketchbook. "Actually," the photographer said, stepping closer to look at Lily's work, "that's quite remarkable. The composition, the detail. How old did you say you are?" 12, Lily replied softly, starting to close her book. "May I?" the photographer asked, holding out his hand. Lily hesitantly handed over her sketchbook, and I watched as he flicked through the pages, his eyebrows rising higher with each turn. "Sandra," he said finally, "you didn't tell me you had an artist in the family. These are extraordinary." "Oh, it's just a hobby," Sandra dismissed, but I could see the photographer was genuinely impressed. "A hobby?" He shook his head. "I do work for several magazines, and I haven't seen natural talent like this in years. The way she captures personality in her sketches, do you have any idea how rare that is?" Sandra's perfect smile faltered slightly. "Well, I'm sure it's just." "Mom," Tom interrupted, his voice firm. "Either all of us are the family photos or none of us are. Your choice." I watched Sandra struggle with herself, saw her calculating the social cost of having her son, the successful doctor, absent from the family photos versus having her granddaughter in a Target dress. "Fine," she said finally, her tone clipped. Everyone in position. And do try to stand toward the back, Olivia. The lighting really is quite harsh. As we arranged ourselves on the staircase, I felt Lily trembling slightly beside me. I squeezed her hand, wishing I could protect her from the casual cruelty of wealth and status. Keep drawing, I whispered to her. Never stop. She nodded, clutching her sketchbook close to her chest. What Sandra didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been secretly submitting Lily's artwork to competitions for months. And just yesterday, I'd received an email that would change everything. But for now, we smiled for the camera. My daughter in her clearance rack dress, worth more in creativity and talent than all the designer labels surrounding us combined. Sandra might think we didn't fit her family's image, but she had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks after the disastrous family photo session, I sat in my classroom during lunch break, staring at an email that made my heart race. Metropolitan Youth Art magazine wants to feature Lily's work in their upcoming issue. I read for the 10th time, still hardly believing it. I'd submitted her portfolio to their annual Young Artists to Watch competition months ago, never expecting anything to come of it. But now they wanted to do a full spread on her work, complete with an interview and professional photos of her in her creative space. My phone buzzed, Sandra's name flashing on the screen. I almost declined the call, still hurt by her treatment of Lily, but something made me answer. Olivia, she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. We're having a small garden party this weekend. The governor's wife will be there, and she specifically asked about Thomas. Do try to dress appropriately this time, and perhaps Lily could wear that lovely dress Emma outgrew. My blood boiled. Emma's hand-me-downs, like we were charity cases rather than family. Actually, Sandra, we can't make it. Lily has an important appointment. More important than networking with the governor's wife. Honestly, Olivia, this is exactly why you'll never understand our world. These connections are everything. I thought about the magazine email, about how Lily's talent had earned recognition all on its own, without any networking or family connections. You're right, Sandra. I don't understand your world, and I'm grateful for that every single day. I hung up before she could respond, something I'd never dared do before. My phone immediately buzzed with texts from her. This attitude is exactly why you don't fit in. Think about Lily's future. The governor's wife could open so many doors. I smiled, thinking about the doors that were already opening, doors Lily had unlocked herself with nothing but her creativity and dedication. That evening, I waited until Tom was home from his shift to share the news with Lily. We made her favorite dinner, simple spaghetti and meatballs, nothing like the gourmet meals at Sandra's, and washed her face as she read the email. They want to feature my art? In a real magazine? Her eyes went wide, hands trembling as she held the printout. Not just feature it, sweetheart, Tom said, beaming with pride. They're calling you one of the most promising young artists they've discovered this year. But Grandma said they were just doodles, Lily whispered, and my heart cracked a little. Your grandmother, Tom said firmly, doesn't know everything. Remember that. The magazine team arrived the following week. They transformed Lily's small bedroom into a photography studio, capturing her surrounded by her sketches, her face alight with passion as she explained her process. The interviewer was especially impressed by her series of family portraits, including the ones from the spring gathering. The emotion you captured, she said, studying the sketch of Sandra and the others on the staircase, it's remarkable. There's so much story in these faces. Lily ducked her head shyly. I just draw what I see. That's exactly what makes you special, the interviewer said. Most people look, but you actually see. The photo shoot ran long, and I had to call Sandra to cancel our mandatory Sunday dinner appearance. Her response was predictably cold. Really, Olivia, these excuses are becoming tiresome. First the garden party, now this. If you're trying to distance yourself from the family, just say so. Actually, Sandra, we're in the middle of something important. When the magazine comes out, you'll understand. Magazine? What magazine? Olivia, if you've involved my granddaughter in some sort of common publicity. I hung up again, twice in 1 week. I was getting better at this. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked me something that broke my heart. Mom, do you think Grandma will be proud of me when she sees the magazine? Will I finally be good enough? I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. Sweetheart, you've always been good enough. More than good enough. Some people, they're so focused on what things cost that they forget what things are worth. Like my Target dress? She asked with a small smile. Exactly like your Target dress. And you know what? That dress is special because it's yours. Because you wore it while creating beautiful art. That makes it worth more than all the designer labels in your grandmother's closet. She hugged me tight, and I felt her relax. The magazine lady said they're sending copies to all the major art schools, she whispered excitedly. And to galleries. I know, baby. And that's happening because of your talent, your hard work. Not because of who you know or what you wear. The next few weeks passed in a blur of excitement and anticipation. The magazine was doing final edits, and Lily had already been contacted by two prestigious art programs interested in having her attend their summer workshops. Then came the day I found Sandra standing on our front porch, holding a glossy advance copy of Metropolitan Youth Art magazine. Her face was a storm of emotions. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, waving the magazine. "Do you have any idea what this could mean for the family's image?" And there it was. Not pride in her granddaughter's achievement, not joy in Lily's success. Just concern about the family image. "Come in, Sandra," I said calmly. "I think it's time we had a talk about what really matters." Sandra sat primly on our modest couch, still clutching the magazine. Through the window, I could see her luxury car parked awkwardly in our driveway, like it was uncomfortable being in our middle-class neighborhood. "The Metropolitan Youth Art magazine," she said, her voice tight. "Do you know who reads this? All the top art schools, galleries, even museum board members." "Yes, we know," I replied calmly. "That's why we submitted Lily's work." "And you didn't think to consult me first? I have connections in the art world. I could have managed this better." She flipped through the pages, stopping at Lily's spread. "These family sketches, they're quite revealing." I looked at the drawings. Lily had captured everything. The judgment in Sandra's eyes during the family gathering. The artificial poses, the underlying tension. But she'd also caught moments of genuine emotion. Tom's proud smile, the love between us, even flashes of loneliness in Sandra's expression, when she thought no one was watching. "They're honest," I said. "That's what makes them special." Just then, Lily came home from school, stopping short when she saw her grandmother. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" Sandra stood, smoothing her designer skirt. "Lily, darling, we need to discuss this. Exposure. Perhaps we could arrange a proper photo shoot, something more fitting of the Wellington name. I know several photographers who cold." "No," Lily said quietly but firmly. I saw a new confidence in her stance. "My art is about truth, Grandma. That's what the magazine liked. They said I see people as they really are." Sandra's expression flickered. "But surely you understand that image is everything. These sketches, they're not exactly flattering to the family." "They're not meant to flatter," Lily replied. "They're meant to show what I see. Like this one." She picked up her sketchbook and quickly drew something, then turned it around. It was Sandra, exactly as she looked right now. Elegant but brittle, trying to control a situation that had slipped beyond her grasp. But there was something else in the sketch, something that made my breath catch, a hint of regret in her eyes, a suggestion of longing in her posture. Sandra stared at the drawing, her carefully maintained facade cracking slightly. Is that how you see me?" "It's who you are, Grandma. Behind all the designer clothes and rules about image. Sometimes you look so sad when you think no one's watching." The room fell silent. I watched Sandra continue to stare at the sketch, her hands trembling slightly. "The magazine wants me to have my own show," Lily continued. "Just a small one at their gallery. Will you come? Not for the connections or the social status, but just for me." Sandra looked up, and for the first time, I saw real tears in her eyes. "A show? My granddaughter is having an art show." "Yes," I said, "because of her talent, her hard work, not because of who she knows or what she wears." Sandra sat down heavily, still holding Lily's sketch. "I have been horrible, haven't I? All this focus on image, on status. I didn't even see." "You saw what you wanted to see," Lily said gently, sitting beside her grandmother. "But it's not too late to look deeper." Tom came home then, still in his scrubs. He paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. "Mom, everything okay?" Sandra stood, straightening her shoulders. For a moment, I thought she'd retreat behind her usual mask of perfection. Instead, she did something that shocked us all. She hugged Lily. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Not because of the magazine or the show, but because you stayed true to yourself. Despite everything." 3 weeks later, at Lily's gallery opening, Sandra proved just how much she changed. She arrived wearing a dress from a department store, something she bought specifically for the occasion. She told everyone to match the one Lily had chosen for herself. The gallery was packed with art world elite, many of whom Sandra knew from her social circles. But instead of networking, she focused on the art, proudly explaining her granddaughter's techniques and vision to anyone who would listen. "My granddaughter," she kept saying, "sees the truth in people. She taught me to see it too." Later that evening, as we gathered for a family photo in front of Lily's favorite piece, Sandra did something unprecedented. She handed her designer handbag to someone else to hold and wrapped her arms around Lily and me. "Take it," she told the photographer. "Take it exactly as we are." The resulting photo wasn't perfect by her old standards. My dress was wrinkled from hours of hosting, Lily's hair had escaped its careful styling, and Sandra's makeup had smudged a bit from happy tears. But it captured something better than perfection. It captured truth. The photo now sits on Sandra's mantle, right in the center, replacing the old formal family portraits. Below it, in a simple frame, is the sketch Lily drew of her that day in our living room. A reminder that sometimes the most valuable image is the one that shows who we really are, designer labels or not.